It was a crisp fall evening, and David, a man who had lived in the same small town for most of his life, found himself walking through the park near his apartment. It was a routine walk after a long day of work, nothing out of the ordinary. But that night, something was different. As he strolled beneath the flickering streetlights, he heard a strange, desperate sound. It was faint at first, but as he stepped closer, the sound grew more distinct. A soft squeal, and then silence. David's heart raced. He looked around, searching for the source of the sound. Then, under the shadows of the trees, he saw it. A small, shivering rabbit caught in a hunter's trap, its body limp and bruised. The rabbit's eyes, wide with fear, locked with David's, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. David didn't hesitate. He rushed to the creature, carefully prying the metal jaws of the trap open with trembling hands. It was no easy task, but the animal's terrified gaze pushed him to act faster. After what felt like an eternity, he freed the rabbit. It was bruised, weak, and trembling, but alive. As the rabbit lay limp in his hands, David could feel his heart pounding. What was he to do now? It was a small, defenseless animal far from home. Without a second thought, he wrapped the rabbit in his jacket and cradled it close, heading home, determined to save the life of the animal he had just met. He named the rabbit Pola, a name that felt fitting for the small creature with fur as soft as the winter snow. A new beginning. David's apartment had always been quiet, too quiet. The only company he had was his thoughts, swirling in the silence of his empty home. That night, though, everything changed. With Pola nestled in a makeshift bed of soft towels, David's role was now clear. He would care for this creature, just as he had rescued it from its painful fate. But David had never owned a pet before. He had no idea how to care for a rabbit. All he knew was that he couldn't just leave it in the park. He had brought it home for a reason. As days passed, David became more and more attached to the small creature. Pola, for the first time in what seemed like ages, had found safety. At first, Pola was wary, hiding in corners, trembling whenever David approached. But little by little, trust began to build. David would sit quietly, offering Pola food, carrots, lettuce, little treats. Slowly, Pola began to come closer, nibbling on the food David offered, inching closer with each passing day. Soon enough, Pola was hopping around David's apartment with a newfound sense of comfort. It would run up to David as he worked at his desk, nudge his hand with its soft nose, asking for attention. The bond that began with a simple act of kindness had blossomed into something beautiful. David was no longer alone. A growing friendship. As the weeks passed, the once quiet apartment filled with the sounds of Pola's playful hops and the occasional soft thump of its paws. David found himself laughing at the little antics of the rabbit, how it would chase after a small ball, how it would hop up on the couch and curl beside him as he read. David's life began to revolve around Pola. Mornings started with feeding time, followed by long hours spent working from home, with Pola hopping around his feet or curling up on the windowsill. David had begun to find joy in the simple things, the way Pola would nudge at his hand, begging for petting, or how Pola would look up at him with those big, innocent eyes. The apartment, once empty and silent, was now filled with life. One day, as David was working on a new project, he glanced over and saw Pola sitting perfectly still, looking out the window. David watched the rabbit, feeling a deep sense of gratitude wash over him. This small creature had brought so much light into his life. He wondered if Pola felt the same way. David began writing a blog about his experiences with Pola, sharing their adventures, and soon, his writing gained a following. People loved reading about the gentle rabbit and its quirky habits. The blog was a window into the bond between man and animal, a testament to the beauty of love and companionship. David named the blog Pola's World, a celebration of their shared journey. Life takes a dark turn. Months passed, and David's life had started to feel more fulfilling, more meaningful. But as life goes, it wasn't long before trouble struck. One day, David began feeling sick, dizzy, weak, and unable to focus. He brushed it off, attributing it to stress from work. But over time, his symptoms worsened. He was hospitalized with a serious medical condition that required immediate treatment. As he lay in the hospital bed, the room felt cold and sterile. The hum of the machines around him, the only sound. David felt alone again, even though the doctors and nurses were kind. His thoughts, however, kept returning to Paula. He had grown so attached to the little rabbit. What would happen to him?